Wow, so Matrix Resurrections, the fourth Matrix movie to be created, is very, very interesting and is also really, really divisive as well. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel Lifestyle Critic. I hope you're having a brilliant day. So in this video we are going to be reviewing Matrix Resurrections, which is a science fiction action thriller movie and is the sequel to Matrix Revolutions. So we have a fourth Matrix movie, which is just absolutely incredible. However, this time it is a little bit of a soft reboot and there is so much social commentary in this movie all about reboot culture, which is really, really interesting and ironic and metaphorical in this movie, as Warner Brothers themselves have been constantly badgering the Wachowskis to make a fourth installment within the Matrix world, which they definitely do pound to death in this movie, and they do reference it a lot. The other things I reference in this movie is a lot of digital addiction. I feel like they explore technology really, really well in this movie, but ultimately it just cannot be compared to the awesomeness of the Matrix trilogy, which was just so groundbreaking and pioneering in its time, and this movie unfortunately just isn't at the same level or at the same caliber as those movies. I mean, it's okay if you look at it as a standalone entry, but it's just so meta, constantly making fun of itself and of its characters as well. So if anything, it just comes across as a bit of a parody sketch of the original movie, and it really will leave you scratching your head by the end of this movie. But as far as this film is concerned, I'm going to be breaking it all down for you in this movie review. So you'll be glad to hear, from a storyline point of view, we're once again centering it all around the Thomas Anderson character, which is really, really great. And this time he finds himself plugged back into the Matrix and is now a video game developer who has developed a trilogy of games all about the Matrix, which I do actually think is pretty hilarious. This time Smith is his business partner and he regularly goes to therapy over having past memories of his time in the Matrix as the Neo character, which he also writes into the game of the Matrix trilogy, which is really, really cool. Now this film also explores a new batch of human characters that are entering into the Matrix and are trying to save the Neo character, and the film then explores if he is going to be able to save the day and if he's going to get out of the Matrix once again. Now from a positive point of view, you know, it is really, really great to re-enter this awesome world. I mean, the Matrix movies just totally reinvented science fiction and the whole movie blockbuster genre when it first came out, totally game changing. And so, you know, it is really, really great. I mean, nostalgia gate is so massive at the moment. And of course, Matrix is a massive part of that. So it's really, really great to go back. I feel like they incorporate modern technology into this movie and into this world really, really well. I mean, the first Matrix movie was released all the way back in 1999. And of course, technology has advanced a lot since then. And I feel like they've written that into the plot and into the movie in general really, really well. And I mean, also reflecting back into the past is done really, really nicely here. It's not as if they're forgetting and rewriting all of the past, even though they do that a little bit in this movie. But you know, that being said, it is really, really nice to honor the past and to hark back to it as well. And of course, this movie is all about reboot. I mean, this movie is itself a little bit of a reboot, and even though it is quite meta and a bit frustrating in parts, I feel like some of the social commentary, at least from a reboot point of view, is really, really interesting. However, now let's look at the negatives, of which there are quite a few. So firstly, all of the fight sequences really are not as epic at all as the Matrix trilogy. I mean, even Matrix, the first one, Reloaded, even Revolutions, which wasn't received that well, it still at least had some pretty epic fight sequences. And even though this movie does have some fight sequences, it feels more like an action movie as opposed to being at the same level as the awesomeness of all of the sequences in the trilogy of movies. And in those films, all of the fight sequences just meant so much because they were the barrier preventing them from getting something really important. And in this film, I feel like they just have them for the sake of having them, as opposed to them actually meaning a lot and really having you on the edge of your seat as you're really with the characters, as you really want them to achieve their particular goal. Whereas this time, it just unfortunately doesn't have any of that. And like I said as well, it's also just a bit of a parody movie that is just constantly making fun of itself, which is really, really funny, but it ultimately just comes across as insulting the things that have gone beforehand. And it also just rehashes a lot of things very similarly in the exact same way actually that Force Awakens did it, which is cool to look back at the past, but when you're just constantly rehashing things, it just isn't as innovative or as new as the entire original movies really, really were. Totally pioneering, really, really innovative. And even though it has modern technology in this movie, unfortunately that's not enough to really be pushing the envelope in really blowing your mind like the first trilogy of movies did. There are of course quite a few recasts in this movie, mainly with the Lawrence Fishburne actor with the Morpheus character, as well as the Agent Smith character. And even though the new actors do a really good job, of course all of the original actors are just really having a big shadow over their performances that I feel like both characters, unfortunately, despite as good as those new characters are, just aren't able to get out of that shadow. And also this movie is tonally very, very, very different to the first trilogy of movies, and even though that's fine, I mean it is trying to do its own thing, it just doesn't mesh well as a unity of movies. And also the concept of an algorithm going wrong and trying to take over humanity, we've just seen so much since the first Matrix movie came out, so it isn't necessarily pioneering in the same way as that original movie was. And also it just feels like there's a lot of ideas stitched together in this movie, but unfortunately they're not wrapped together effectively enough, and therefore don't tell a bit of a cohesive narrative and structured in a really effective way like the originals were. But you know, that being said, I did like how this movie instead is now looking at desire and fear, which feels very similar / different to what the original movie was all about, which was all about free will and destiny. And so I think it's really, really interesting as it's saying, you know, some people will be happy to stay within this Matrix world as opposed to what is happening in the real world, as it's saying that a lot of people will actually prefer this virtual reality fake world as opposed to the truth of what's happening out there. And I think the concept of the truth is a really, really cool one in this movie, as it's saying that, you know, if everybody is led to believe that the Matrix is actually this video game, then when they do find out the truth, they'll dismiss it as fiction, which I do think is quite clever in and of itself. But you know, from a storyline point of view, I really feel like they could have made this return to the Matrix just so much more impactful and just so much more awesome as well. So credit where credit's due, the cast and characters in Matrix Resurrections do a phenomenal job in this movie, so let's go through them one by one. So first up, of course, we have Keanu Reeves, which is just so awesome. Thomas Anderson / Neo is back in this movie, which is just such an incredible moment in and of itself. And you know, it's really, really cool to see this guy retreading all of the steps and aspects from the first movie. However, it is just a bit of a shadow of his former self and is nowhere near as epic or as cool, and if anything, just comes across as a bit of a parody. But you know, that being said, Keanu Reeves is just so talented and is just so awesome in this role that he is actually, despite all of the issues, able to carry this movie really, really well. And it's just so cool to see him reinserted back into the Matrix and seeing how he will escape it this time, given everything that's happened in the past, which I do think is actually really, really wicked. We also have Carrie-Anne Moss returning as Trinity, even though at the start of this movie she is known as the Tiffany character. And I think it's really, really cool, as the Tiffany character, her husband is actually played by the original stunt double of the Neo character from the first suite of movies, which I do think is really, really cool. And gosh, Trinity is just so instantly iconic and is just able to lead this movie / co-lead this movie really, really well. And speaking of which, all of the scenes where it's Neo and Trinity together, literal fireworks on screen, the absolute couple goals that everyone was supporting when the first suite of movies came out, and I just feel like they're able to recapture all of that really, really well. We've also got Yahya Abdul Mateen II playing this alternate version of the Morpheus character, and I mean, they do explain really, really well actually why this guy has a new face and why he is recasted, and his new version of this character is obviously slightly different to the Lawrence Fishburne version. But that being said, like I said before, Lawrence Fishburne's shadow is just totally eclipsing anything that Yahya Abdul Mateen II can do in this role. And despite the fact that actually he does do a really, really good job, Lawrence Fishburne is just always in the back of everyone's mind as the Morpheus character. We've also got Jonathan Groff, this time being the recasted version of the Smith character. And I absolutely love, conceptually, the Smith character. I absolutely love all of the yin and the yang aspects with him and Neo. And I just love the storyline of a machine character just going wrong. And after Neo went inside of him, he kind of took something from Neo and then just really did become his opposite. And I just think that aspect of this character is really, really cool. And they really do bring that back into this movie really, really greatly. And of course, this is a slightly different version again to what we've seen, which is really, really great. But similarly to Morpheus, just the ghost of Hugo Weaving is just always in this movie. And I feel like it's really nice actually, the fact that they have got Lawrence Fishburne and Hugo Weaving just being reflected back in some of the archive footage. But that being said, it just doesn't allow Jonathan Groff and Yahya Abdul Mateen II to really own their roles, despite the fact that they did do a really, really good job in this film. We've also got Neil Patrick Harris, who is Thomas Anderson's therapist and is also the analyst in the Matrix there is the new updated version of the architect, which I think is really, really wicked. And also I think the storyline with this character, in terms of, like I said before, that human characters do actually like this fake reality of this world and won't really want to escape the Matrix, as it has everything that they would want in this virtual reality space. I feel like they use that concept really, really well. We've also got Priyanka Chopra Jonas in this movie playing the adult version of the Sati character who we met in Matrix Revolutions, and I feel like this character is doing a really good job in showing how humans and machines can actually coexist, which I feel like is communicated in this movie really, really well, and actually is something that we've seen in other films as well. We've also got Jada Pinkett Smith in this movie playing a super older version of the Niobe character, and I love how they show through this character that actually 60 years have passed, and this character, along with Neil Patrick Harris's character, do a really good job in terms of exposition and really explain to the audience what has been happening since the third movie and since the fourth movie. And given everything that this character has gone through since we've last seen her, you can understand why this character is really after peace and harmony and doesn't want to go through everything that she had to go through before. We've also got Jessica Henwick in this movie, who is absolutely excellent as the Bugs character, so full of hope, and really is the audience's eyes and ears. Even though she does kind of know what's going on, she is really questioning things as well, in the exact same way that the audience will be questioning things as well. And I feel like this character, like I said, is such a great new addition, and I feel like she brings so much to this movie. And we've also, of course, got Lambert Wilson, who is once again playing the Merovingian, and again, he is having so much disgust over humans' addiction to technology and to the whole digital world. So from a casting character's point of view, even though some of them are hard to connect with, I feel like for the vast majority of them, the casting characters are really, really awesome in this film. Say from a visuals point of view, this movie does look really, really good. I mean, all of the modern technology aspects of this film are really, really great, even though they do go to town with all of the modernization of technologies. And like I said before, I do actually like how they cut back to all of the original material from the trilogy. I feel like that's really, really cool. However, I just feel like there's nothing as groundbreaking, memorable, or as iconic as all of the core innovation that the first Matrix movie had. I would say this was really, really cool visuals if it was any other science fiction movie. However, because it's a Matrix movie, it just needs to be a league above everything else, and there just isn't anything as iconic and as awesome as bullet time from the first movie, or even some aspects of Matrix Reloaded. It just isn't, like I said, at the same caliber. And on that point, even the kung fu aspects, they just made them more parody based rather than being really cool, really intense, really, really slick. And in a similar vein, just felt like any other action movie as opposed to being this absolutely awesome Matrix movie. And so from a visuals point of view, whilst they are decent, they just could have been so much better and just elevated to another level. So from a comparison point of view, unfortunately, I just feel like as far as all of the Matrix movies are concerned, it just gets worse and worse and worse. I mean, I wasn't that big of a fan of Matrix Revolutions, and maybe I would say Revolutions and Resurrections could be on the same level. But you know, that being said, I feel like this movie unfortunately isn't as great, as awesome, and as unbelievably epic as the first ever Matrix movie was. I mean, maybe I'd say this movie is a little bit better than Keanu Reeves' Replicas film. But I wish I could say that this movie, you know, is so bad, is so good, like Batman and Robin and Mortal Kombat Annihilation. But you know, from a comparison point of view, I just feel like there are so much better and stronger other science fiction movies. So overall, with Matrix Resurrections, it is a bit of a tricky one, as there is enjoyment to be had in this movie. I mean, all of the meta jokes, all of the parody aspects, all of the, you know, making fun of a mother company like Warner Brothers are really, really hilarious, and it is really engaging to watch. I just feel like if you're going to compare it to other Matrix movies, which of course you have to do as this is a bit of a reboot, it just isn't able to be as engaging. But you know, that being said, I feel like all of the breakdown aspects of the Neo character / the Thomas Anderson character is really, really cool. All of the exploration of desire and fear really did hark back to all of the freedom versus choice, all of those debates. Really putting a lens on reboot culture and really making fun of that is really, really cool. However, I just feel like they tried to do a little bit too much with this movie, and in turn just made it into a bit of a Frankenstein monster, and didn't do any of them as well as they could have done if they really did focus it and really did make it tonally aligned to other films. But you know, like I said, there is enjoyment to be had with this film. I just wish it would have just done things in a similar vein to how they had done it before. For example, posing these really big mind-blowing questions And certain aspects of this film, you have seen it already in other science fiction and action movies. And whilst this movie definitely is very self-referential, it just doesn't do it in a really innovative or a clever way. And in turn, it just treats itself like a bit of a joke. And so for all of those reasons, I have to give it a 3.5 out of 10. Now I'd love to hear from you, so please let me know what you thought of Matrix Resurrections in the comment section below. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in my next video.